Throughout this course, we have systematically addressed the essential aspects of graphic composition, analyzed its expressive tools and principles, and explored the Gestalt principles. These components of composition knowledge are often separated and studied in parts because it can be easier to learn that way. However, in a graphic composition, all these components coexist simultaneously, and it's valuable to comprehend how the previously learned principles can be integrated into a unified process. Working with a composition typically involves 4 steps that are carried out in sequence. Generating an idea, choosing compositional principles and tools that support your idea, analyzing the groups of elements within the composition, verifying that the finished composition follows the laws of composition. You should be familiar with all of these steps by now, but we'll review them again using an example, this time in the context of a step-by-step process for creating a composition. First, let's begin with the initial step, generating an idea. There are typically 2 distinct components in graphic composition, the rational and the emotional. The rational component consists of all the information we analyze, such as texts, descriptions, dates, numbers, graphs, and so on. On the other hand, the emotional component encompasses the feelings we experience when perceiving a graphic composition. Suppose we intend to design a poster for the composition course that begins on April 20 and is conducted online. To access this course, one can subscribe. The poster is aimed at young professionals with little knowledge of the subject. However, the course is designed so that even beginners can understand the information, so they need not worry about its complexity. The poster aims to communicate all of this through a single graphic composition. For a graphic composition, the idea can be presented in the form of a table. At the top, as shown, the primary idea is described, to pique the interest of potential students for the composition course. Below are 2 components of the idea. On the left, the rational component is described, including factual information about the course, such as its name, start date, cost, and so on. On the right, the emotional component is highlighted to create a feeling that the course is easy to understand and engaging. Once you have formulated and described the idea, the next step is determining how it will be presented visually. It is helpful to have a detailed description of how each aspect of the idea will be executed. For instance, we will convey the rational part of the idea by presenting information within the poster. To reinforce the emotional aspect, we will incorporate a cartoon character. This will create the impression that the course is easy to understand and suitable for all ages. We will include thematic images to clarify that the course is about composition. The color scheme should be bright, and the text's tone should be casual. All these elements together can be called a design strategy. Now that we have formulated the idea and design strategy, we can proceed to select compositional principles and tools that suit our idea. Our composition will consist of texts that describe the course on a rational level, a cartoon character, images related to composition, and a bright color palette. These are the building blocks of graphic composition. The focus of our composition will be on the character and the course title, which will be the central elements. Let's now explore how to choose the type of composition and how to work with expressive means. First, we must determine whether to use an open or closed composition. An open composition creates a sense of space and freedom without restrictions. On the other hand, a closed composition helps focus on a particular element, but it limits the design by introducing constraining elements. For our poster, we want to avoid any sense of restriction. Therefore, we'll opt for an open composition. Next, we must decide whether our open composition will be symmetrical or asymmetrical. Each type has its benefits. A symmetrical composition creates a sense of balance and order, while an asymmetrical one conveys a feeling of creativity and disorder. Given that our goal is to create an educational course, we want to convey a sense of structure and balance. Therefore, we have decided to go with a symmetrical composition. And what about choosing between a static or dynamic composition? A static composition conveys a sense of calmness and stability, while a dynamic one represents movement and action. Since our course requires concentration and focus, we want the design to reflect that. However, it doesn't mean we can't incorporate some dynamic elements. It's settled then. The overall composition will be static, with some possible dynamic elements included. Before starting the composition, it's important to consider how expressive elements of graphic design can benefit us. Keep in mind that expressive means are often described in pairs, such as dimension and rhythm, symmetry and asymmetry, commensuration and proportionality, size and scale, likeness and difference, contrast and nuance, consonance and dissonance. You may be curious how these pairs can be applied to your composition. Now we'll discuss each pair in detail, starting with dimension and rhythm. This pair of expressive elements aims to create a sense of movement and depth. Since we want people to grasp the information on the poster quickly, we can use this pair to ensure readability. We'll position the inscriptions towards the top half of the poster, where the reading begins, and arrange them in a clear sequence. This pair will also be helpful here, where we incorporate decorative elements. Can you sense it? They're almost moving. The symmetry-asymmetry pair conveys the idea of either being close to a symmetrical state or being far from it, resulting in balance or imbalance. Since our composition is centered around the line of symmetry, it tends to give a sense of balance. An isosceles triangle in the background, with its vertex precisely along the line of symmetry, can enhance this feeling. Aligning our character and the course name along the line of symmetry will also contribute to the overall balance of the composition. Commensuration and proportionality express the relationship of size and scale among the composition as a whole and its individual components. To achieve this, we begin by examining the format, which in our case is A4. It has a vertical rectangular shape and can contain imaginary rectangles to inscribe letters. We aim to make the majority of elements in the poster mutually proportional. For instance, the font size of the course for beginners inscription is related to the composition inscription, and the circle in the background is proportional to the font size. Additionally, the large circle on the background is proportional to the smaller circles. The expressive elements of size and scale aim to convey the relationships between design elements. The character's size is crucial in understanding the proportions of other elements. It is placed at the forefront of the composition, making it the central image. Its size also emphasizes its importance in the design. Observing the poster, we notice that the triangle behind the character is approximately half the person's size, and one of the circles in the background could fit within the character's palm. The course name is also significant and therefore written in large font. The similarity and contrast help us group design elements by color and shape. In our poster, we apply these principles. We use white for all the text to make it stand out and easy to distinguish from other information. No other information will be in white. The background is blue, so we ensure the decorative elements are not too contrasting. For example, the circle is dark blue, and the triangle is blue with light shades of purple. In contrast, the character will wear bright clothes to differ from both the text and the background. Nuance and contrast also play a role in highlighting differences and making them stand out. In our composition, we've identified the inscriptions and the character as the most important elements. We've chosen the colors white and orange to give them the strongest contrast. We've also used contrast in size to emphasize the importance of the text. The most important inscription is larger than the others. We've introduced another contrast using a grotesque font combined with a cartoon-style character. The character conveys a sense of simplicity, while the bold and saturated grotesque font adds a fundamental and serious tone. Finally, consonance and dissonance are expressive means that convey the composition's approach to a state of harmony or a state of excitement, or even anxiety. Since we aim for a harmonious and positive perception, we will use a soft and pleasing color palette, a smiling main character, and a balanced composition. Conversely, if we were to convey an opposite impression, we would need to reverse these qualities, resulting in a drastically different design. Now let's explore how the Gestalt grouping principles aided us in crafting this composition. These principles are useful tools as they help simplify the perception of objects in a composition by grouping them. Our initial application of these principles was with the principle of proximity. By positioning inscriptions with similar meanings next to each other, we created a group that includes the course level, start date, and format, all linked to the course name. Using the principle of similarity, we applied the same color to all the text on the poster, creating a cohesive group of information. Adding more colors to the text design palette would have only complicated the composition, so we avoided it. While we don't necessarily need to use the principle of closure, our course is about composition, and this principle is a useful element of the composition, so let's use it in some way. For example, we can incorporate it into the inscription by making some changes, such as altering the letter O. Although they won't look precisely like letters anymore, the name will remain readable as we intend it to be. This will create a unique logo for the course. The principle of symmetry in Gestalt theory functions precisely as intended. We perceive all elements with a shared line of symmetry as a cohesive group. We employed the principle of common fate to unify the secondary plot elements into a row. Here is our group of decorative elements, which even seem to have a sense of motion. And if the frog spits here, some circles will disappear, and, oh, excuse us, we got sidetracked there. We employed the principle of continuity to unify the inscriptions into one cohesive semantic group, allowing for easier interpretation of their meaning. When choosing the stylistic solutions, we also took advantage of the principle of past experience. Viewers instinctively grouped the formal style inscriptions and the elements in the cartoon style into a separate group. Emotional reactions to these groups are also based on past experience. Cartoons are usually associated with simplicity. Just imagine how different the composition would appear if Prince Hamlet replaced our animated hero. It becomes more complex, isn't it? And one might not anticipate a positive message. As we near completion of the poster and have discussed how expressive means and the Gestalt grouping principles aided in its creation, it's appropriate to perform a quick check for adherence to the rules of composition. It's simple. Let's ask a few questions to check. Does the visual hierarchy in this layout effectively communicate the main and secondary elements? Yes. Through careful selection of sizes for the elements, we have highlighted the character and the course title as the focal points. Additionally, by reducing the size of other elements and inscriptions, we have conveyed a gradual decrease in their significance within the composition. Does this composition exhibit visual coherence? Yes. We have achieved visual consistency by carefully selecting and aligning the fonts. The illustrative components of the composition also maintain their integrity and harmonize with each other. Additionally, the use of geometric shapes in the background serves as a formal connection between the text's geometric elements and the character's playful nature. Is this composition optically balanced? Yes. After all, right from the start, we used the axis of symmetry as a fundamental element in constructing the composition. Fantastic! All the principles have been upheld. But before we wrap up, we must confess, the composition algorithm we have outlined is not a universally accepted or standard approach. It is something we devised ourselves. Experienced designers often develop their own unique style and workflow over time. In reality, many designers don't consciously think about the specific compositional principles they employ or how they achieve certain effects. However, when you're just starting out in mastering the art of composition, following this algorithm, or at the very least critically analyzing each of your works using this algorithm, will assist you in gaining a better understanding and mastery of visual techniques. Furthermore, as you progress in your career and ascend to the role of an art director or lead designer, the skill to analyze a composition based on its types, laws, expressive means, and Gestalt grouping principles will enable you to effectively articulate what makes a composition more or less successful. That's all for now. We hope you found the course enjoyable and that the knowledge you've acquired will prove valuable soon. And this isn't a farewell. We eagerly await your return to other courses offered on our platform.